A biome map of Serina 15 million years post-establishment, showing tectonic changes since the Hypostacene, among them the separation of Ankiska and Striata, and the full fusion of Striata southwards with Walteria, which has nearly closed off a large inland ocean, as the supercontinent of Cirrus breaks into two distinct landmasses for the first time. And Kiska itself also begins to pull apart, with its north moving eastward and its south southwards towards Devlandia, widening a thin land bridge. It is now 15 million years since Serina's establishment, and the Hypostacene is over. In the last few million years, Serina has entered into a new climactic condition, with the moon gradually exhibiting a worldwide trend towards cooling and the spread of aridity. Within 5 million years of Serina's abandonment, once life had been allowed to establish itself firmly to its new ecology, initially mild and tropical conditions had already begun to dissolve, unsustainable without artificial maintenance. Instead, the world of Serina began to revert towards the drier grassland world its geography naturally would sustain best. With the gradual decrease in precipitation over much of the moon, bamboo forests, which spread from pole to pole within only a few million years of establishment, began to retreat to a smaller number of remaining isolated regions still moist enough to support their rapid and lush growth, as hardier prairie grasses, sunflowers, and dandelion derivatives reclaimed much of their former range. Less reliant on high precipitation, these plants can store large quantities of water and nutrients in underground roots and tubers, and guard it from hungry animals with spines and unpalatable tissues. Where rainfall is too low for bamboo to grow, but higher than on the open grasslands, sunflower barrens transform into the beginnings of a new sustainable woodland type, as suddenly as other floral groups develop tolerance to the toxic tannins they produce and evolve to compete beside them. Beginning 11 million years post-establishment, Serina has entered the Tempucenic era. Characterized by a gradual shift of the Serinan world from tropical to temperate, it will bring Serina's first ice age, as seasonal ecosystems will begin to outnumber tropical, the latter of which will soon be confined solely to a thin but rich ring along the equator, as the polar regions of Serina begins to experience snowfall for the first time. Only a taste of what is now to come. At the era's height, Serina will develop its first permanently frozen polar ice caps, which will not melt again for tens of millions of years. Serina will not become a snowball world, however, any more than our own world is today. Winter will still give way to spring, and spring to summer. A seasonal rotation on a tilted axis means Serina experiences its seasons not unlike our own. There will always be balance, and life, now well established, will go on. Migration becomes widespread, as animals are forced away from comfortable home ranges with increasing changes in their environments as winter and summer grow increasingly different. Faced with these same challenges, Serina's flora begin their most noticeable evolution yet, beginning to take on appearances increasingly unlike their ancestors and grow in new, innovative ways, carving their own path up the tree of life silently, often overshadowed, but not stopped, by the lively activities of the insects and animals around them. As desertification spreads, it is the towering, tree-like sunflowers that slowly become Serina's equivalents to the cacti and other hardy succulents of Earth, reducing their foliage to only a seasonal flush, eventually for some to lose it altogether in favor of swollen and spiny trunks, with only their vibrant golden blossoms to ever belay their ancient ancestry as a common garden plant and roadside weed. But other plants will soon rise again to compete. Remaining equatorial and patchy temperate forest is still dominated by bamboo, which now lies overshadowed by more drought-tolerant flora in most of the rest of the world. In millennia to come, however, it will experience a resurgence, as the Tempucene and the changes it has brought will be the foundation, thanks to some little helpers, for the next major innovation in the plant kingdom, which will put them one day again on par to, and perhaps even beyond, their hardier foresting counterparts. Conditions will no longer be universally paradisiacal and pristine in a changing world, but change brings adaptation. Change is the only thing, anywhere, at any time, that always stays the same. As it always has, life goes on. And as it goes on, it becomes ever more distinct, unique, and diverse. 5 million years is not a long time on a geologic timescale. It is, however, enough to have brought some significant innovations to Serina's ecology. Within this span have occurred numerous large evolutionary innovations not quite reached just 5 million years ago. Entire new forests now grow across Ankiska and the north of Striata. No longer unnatural monocroppings, the sunflower barrens. These have instead given way to diverse forests of false trees, composed in fact of large, perennial sunflowers, which have since traded their annual growth habit to stand the year round on insulated, above-ground trunks, providing a source of food and shelter to many animals the year round. Grasses begin to diversify noticeably in the Tempucene, as initial explosions of adaptable primitive plants die back and are replaced by, or themselves adapt into, forms adapted specifically to the conditions on Serina. Bamboo, pushed to rarer wet environments by a drying climate, still absolutely monopolize anywhere wet enough to support them, from pole to equator. Thanks in part to an increasingly mutualistic relationship many species have begun to develop, with a number of species of small leafcutter ants, which evolve to live almost their entire lives based within the warmth and safety of their hollow stalks. Aided by the shelter that nests within the bamboo provided from cold, rain, and predators, the insects have begun in the Tempucene to spread back northwards and south. Protected by nests inside these hard, woody stalks, they can hibernate long winters away without much worry of being eaten by hungry birds. Initially existing as a parasite to the bamboo trees, they live within them as long as they can before they've eaten away too much of a cane's foliage for it to survive, and the cane dies, and takes with it the colony. By now, however, some species have ceased to feed upon their host plants or host species, allowing it to grow for longer and prolonging their own lifespans. In return, some bamboo begin now to evolve specially designed hollow knots at their joints to accommodate the insects, which now serve to guard them from the onslaught of other ant colonies which try to feed on them. It becomes advantageous for bamboo clumps to attract and hold onto their own resident ant populations, for if claimed by one as home, it will not be eaten by another as supper. Many leafcutter ants evolve new warrior castes, similar to those normally only seen in predatory ants, which serve only to guard host trees from the hungers of neighboring ant colonies, while foragers, similar to the ancestral ants, go out to feed on their neighbors' home groves and braving their own warriors, unaware of the irony in the whole situation. It is the bamboo which are the true winners no matter what, however. All guarded by their own armies, they are individually all eaten considerably less frequently and in lesser quantity than otherwise they would be without the ants' border wars. Though the ants must consume the same amount of food no matter what, they no longer decimate single groves to death, instead taking only small and sustainable quantities from each plant.